All right, welcome back to the show. Today we've got my buddy Max Toler. I'm excited to learn more about his story, what he's doing. I know he's in self-storage, but he's got, I know he's been doing some things in the past that's exciting and fun. So we'll get to hear about those. So Max, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, John. It's an honor to come on with you. I appreciate the invite. I've been a listener since day one, since you started. So it's awesome to have a chance to come on and be a part of it. So thanks again.
Man, I appreciate that. You have no idea how much that means. So I appreciate that. So take us back, wherever the beginning is, high school, after high school, or, what were you doing? When did you catch the real estate bug?
Yeah. So, the real estate bug came much later in life for me. All I cared about growing up was being a professional boat racer, to be honest with you. So I had an uncle that was a real mentor to me, and he was a racer. And I just wanted to be like him. So I went to college, got a 4-year business degree. I did not pursue any kind of a business venture or try to look for a job right after graduation. I went to California and picked up a brand new race boat, and I started my own racing team. And I did that for many, many years.
How did you do that? I would imagine it's expensive, right?
It is. My uncle allowed me to work with him, and I actually drove his boats for years. And then there came a time where he was ready to get out of that, and I was ready to continue on. I was just really starting to come into my own, and so it was tough financially to do that. Not to mention having the time to I traveled all over North America, Canada, Mexico, East and West Coast. And who would hire a guy like that that's gone basically March through September, October? So I had to think of ways to go into business for myself so that I could set my own hours and I could afford to do that, But it's like any other thing where you really have a big passion for it. You scrape up what you can. You live way below your means just to afford to fuel your passion. Yeah.
For sure. So was there any money in it? Well, I'm guessing there's some money, but how did you do?
Most of the when you're talking about auto racing versus boat racing, not even comparison in money. So it was more or less finding the sponsorships to keep the team up afloat. And there was prize money, but most of it was driven off of your sponsorship. So that's kind of what started my journey with knocking on doors and trying to promote myself and try to fund the team on a yearly basis, So I was trying to sell myself many years ago, but it wasn't in real estate. It was in racing. So, racing was a part of my life for 18 years into my early 30s. I got out in the early 2000s, and started a family and seemed to be more focused on business at that point.
Yeah, no, that's cool. It sounds like obviously you didn't learn just a lot of boat racing techniques, but I'm sure you're a competitive person and learn basically sales skills, it sounds like, too.
Absolutely. Just selling yourself, believing in yourself. It was when the .com era really kind of came in. So it was we had that level of technology, but we didn't have the social media aspect where we could self-promote ourselves for very little dollars. We had to pay big money for promo packaging and marketing companies to put those things together for us to go out and shop, different possible sponsors that would want to jump on board with us. Now if I would have had that technology nowadays, I could have done it with a much smaller budget and probably been way more effective. But it's just the times. What can you do? But I did that for a long time, but one of the things that made me kind of shift gears, I had a lot of people that were getting hurt. Some people had unfortunately died in accidents. And I just started to play back in my head, what do I want to be that guy? When it came to racing, I had everything that had the best of the best. I built a brand new race shop. I had an 18-wheeler. I had multiple boats and engines, and but when the racing season was over and I came home, I just lived in this crappy little condo, and I just kind of hunkered down for the winter months and just trained and got ready for the next season. And I kind of lived that life for a long time. I was like, man, I'd like to have more, when I come home. I'd like to have a nicer home, and so I got my wheels started spinning, especially when I had my daughter. And so I felt like I needed to do more. The racing had kind of run its course, and it was getting more difficult to find sponsors. So I was ready for a life change, and I was reaching like a burnout stage in my life and racing in general. So that was a big pivoting point for me to get into something else at that point.
Yeah, I mean that's a long time to do anything, right? Especially, I mean, you're a professional athlete. That's a long time to do that. So how was your adjustment, and how did you pivot?
Well, it was difficult because I mean that's all I ever wanted to do. I never really in my mind really thought beyond that. I always thought that as a driver, when I got too old to drive, I was going to be maybe a team owner and would continue in the sport some way, shape, or form. And that didn't happen. But so to be able to do that and travel, I had my family, starting with my grandfather, had a glass business, like auto glass, residential, commercial, and I grew up in that business, and I could do that type of work. So I opened up my own business so that I could travel, and basically that business was shut down during the summer months. I come back in town, and I had that small business. When I say a business, I mean it was me, So that kind of started me down the entrepreneurial, path, is trying to, make the time for my passion. I had to work for myself, and I actually went into the marine business for a short period of time. I had an opportunity to take over a marine service center. Actually, it was kind of like a master lease, to where it was a Mercury Marine factory authorized service center where I could sell parts, and I could sell engines, and I could do warranty work. And we had a little fiberglass shop there, and it was kind of a, we could pretty much do anything at this shop. And I thought that business venture would help fuel the racing side of business, that I was also involved in. And a couple of years into that, I realized that that was not the right way to go. I found myself working harder in the business and had less time to focus on my racing program. So that was kind of a short-lived business venture, maybe 2 years before I realized I needed to pull out of that. Went back into the glass business until it was time to get out of racing. So yeah, that's kind of where that part of my life ended. But kind of
talk about the adjustment. It seems to come up quite a bit, whether it's someone played sports in high school and college. We've had some I guess semi-pro athletes on here too. How was that? I mean, obviously you fit that, you're a professional athlete. How was that adjustment? And are you still maybe adjusting?
I am still adjusting, and at the time, I was married. Right towards the end of my career, I got married, and I had a baby girl, and that had a lot to do with my choices of getting out of racing. And it was tough on me because it was all I ever wanted to do. And when that day comes, whether you're, like I say, I know you're involved with basketball, and when you realize that you have run, it's run its course, and you're not that person anymore. It was very difficult. I couldn't even be around the sport. I couldn't go to any races because it just would kill me. So I just kind of clean break, cut it off, and just started a new chapter in my life. So it was very difficult, not to mention it was a little strain on my marriage, and the marriage did not work out. Unfortunately, I'm married to my high school sweetheart now, and we have two kids in LSU right now. And so I was able to move on. But back then, when I was married to my first wife, that's when the real estate bug hit me. But it was difficult because I was getting out of racing, and I was trying to transition into something else. And so she and her family were custom home builders. And so I really was house hacking with her, not really knowing what house hacking was at the time, but we were doing with brand new custom homes. Her father owned some apartments. So what we would do is we would build a house. We'd move into it for a year, put it up for sale, move it into an apartment, and do it again. And what we were trying to do was basically have our final, custom home that we would like to own and live in forever. And that home would be paid for with our house hacking. So that's where I first got my real estate bug, and learned a lot from them during those few years.
That's cool. That's it's actually how I grew up. That's what my parents did. They built spec homes, and we moved every 2 years for, I think there was between 8 and 10 houses we did that. So it was basically my whole childhood growing up. It's powerful as long as the market's appreciating, right? Like it's it works out, and
Yeah.
it could be a
Unfortunately,
lot of
he got
stress,
caught in
but it
that.
sounds like you did that before kids and before family.
Yeah, and we did. My wife at the time did have two kids from her previous marriage, so we did. There were kids involved, and they moved around with us. But yeah, I mean, I was still in the glass business at that time, and I was just getting up every morning, just grinding, working hard.
By
And I
yourself,
always made a good
right?
living in the glass business. But you know, they opened up the real estate side to me, and so we would go to closing and collect a check for 50 grand and roll that into the next deal. And here I am. I'm just trying to, this is early 2000, so I'm trying to make $1,000 a week or $1,500 a week. And I was just what it took to make that. And then we go to closing and get a check like that. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to do that in the glass business, at least not the scale that I was at. So light bulb went off there. I need to do more of that. And we did continue to do more of that.
Yeah, I want to hear what you did to transition there. Before we do, what suggestions do you give somebody trying to, I guess, shed an old identity?
I think it's come to terms with who you were, what do you want to be, and opening your mind to something new. And maybe you were at the top of your game in whatever you were doing, and there was an aura around that. And then it's almost like when you leave high school and you go into college. When you're a senior, you're the guy, and then you go into college and you're nobody. I kind of felt like that was who I was. I was this race boat guy in front of cameras and racing all over the country, and I had a lot of confidence in that. And then I moved into something else, and I knew nothing about it, and I was basically starting from scratch. Nobody knew who I was. And it's like you have to get over that newbie feeling of and I'm kind of like that in storage now. I'm new to storage, and people don't know me, and I'm still trying to feel my way around. I think it's being open to new ideas and accepting that I can't really change what I've done in the past. It ran its course, and then you have to just accept that this is my new path, and just look at it as it's just a new adventure. It's just a new phase of your life. Phases can't last forever in your life. I just feel like, okay, it's time to pivot, and it's going to be a good thing, So that's kind of how I process it.
That's good. No, that's really good. Well, and you said that at least initially, you had to completely remove yourself from boat racing. Can you go to boat races now?
I can. I don't have any interest in it, to be honest with you. I'm so far removed from it, and it's nothing compared to what it used to be. The venues and the sponsors. It was way bigger when I was doing it. It is now. So I really don't have. Now I can just follow it. What's left of it, I can follow on Facebook or whatever and keep up with it. But it's just really. It's not something that I really follow or interested in anymore. So I don't feel I'm kind of over that hump now. I don't need it anymore. But I love boating. We have a lake house about 2 hours from here. We spend a lot of time there. My kids grew up on the water, skiing and wakeboarding, and so I'm heavily involved on the water. And I've had some speed boats in the last few years. So I still love being out there. But as far as being in competition, I think I'm over that now.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's good stuff. So had a glass business. What'd you do?
So pretty much, and I still have the glass business. I still do the work, and I've always done both real estate and that. So basically, I had a 2-year-old baby girl that I had domiciliary rights to. She lived with me, and I was able to reunite with a high school sweetheart who had a son that was the exact same age as my daughter. And we ended up reuniting and raising these 2 kids, got married, and we raised these 2 kids. They're 20 now, and they were 2. So basically all those years, I was just trying to be super dad. Our kids played soccer. We were at every event. And just to kind of throw a little monkey wrench into it, I was also a musician for a long time. I played bass in bands all over the South. That's what I did in the wintertime when I wasn't boat racing. I played bass in bands. And so, even when my kids were growing up, I played music for extra money. I had the glass business, and then I was, got into house. And so I was like doing 2 or 3 different things. But those years of I was just trying to provide for my family, live in a nicer area, put kids in private school. I was just grinding in whatever avenue I could take to make money and live in a nice area and provide the best life for these two kids. And my wife did the same. She's always worked she's got a corporate job and has always, held her end down. So we worked really good together to raise these kids. So that's pretty much was my grind every day, was those three things. It was the glass business. It was the playing music for a long time. I don't do that any longer. And then it was trying to flip houses is what I was doing back then.
Gotcha. Okay. So it sounds like you scaled that glass business. How'd you do that?
Well, the glass business, I've got other family in the glass business, so I've got a lot of really good feedback from them over the years of what I should do. And it was either in the glass business, you need to be pretty large in scale, or you need to be just really small, one or two trucks on the road. The middle of the road shop is just hard to be profitable. And I chose just to be small because it was manageable. I didn't have a passion for the business. I did it because I was good at it and I knew it, and I did it the best that I could at the level that I was at. I never wanted to grow the glass business, and I'm still having, still have the glass business now, but it's way different. I've scaled it way back, and I have high-end clientele, and I do mostly just insurance work and things like that. And so I'm glad that I kept it on the smaller level. I just never had the passion to scale it big.
Yeah. So how active are you in that now? I'm assuming you have some employees, right?
Yeah. Well, right now it's just me. I've had other employees over the years, but I've scaled it down just to me. And now I'm only, doing it by appointment only 2, 3, 4 days a week, maybe 2 to 4 hours a day. Since I've got into storage, I'm able to, I can't step off away from the glass business completely, but that is my goal, to completely leave that business and be a full-time owner operator. But I'm not there. I'll be the first to admit that I'm not there yet, and I don't want to rush that process. But what I have learned is I know where I want to go, and I know how to get there. But so I'm not there yet, and I've already kind of put into place of scaling that glass business back, and I've also, created a lot more time for myself. I'm just getting a little bit more precise on how I schedule those jobs and how often I spend in that business, because I find that every minute or every hour I spend in that business is less time I can focus on the current storage facilities that I own and trying to acquire new ones. I find that that's really kind of holding me back now, but that just kind of gives you an idea of why I didn't scale that business. I just didn't have a passion for it. I guess because I've done it my whole life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. You said you were flipping homes too. How many have you done, and how long was that for?
Yeah, I probably flipped not a lot, maybe 7 or 8 homes. And I did that along with the glass business, and I didn't do the work myself. I hired crews. It was difficult for me to get a crew on the job and stay on the job. It seemed like every crew you get worked for a larger builder, and they worked on your house whenever they weren't working on that larger builder's house. It was hard for me to create a list of subs that were going to be loyal to me and jump on a job and finish it. It was super competitive too, and I found that grind of trying to find the next one and trying to get this one sold, and it didn't sell what you thought it was going to sell for. That after a while kind of worked on me, and I was like, I think I want to get out of the flipping and get into just a buy and hold and get into just owning rentals. And so once I sold the flip houses off, I started reading books on multifamily and got into the podcast thing. I thought multifamily was what I needed to do. So I ended up buying some fourplexes, and I actually developed a little small mobile home park that had apartments and those things. So I did that for a while, and I liked that model to where it was steady income. And once you get things kind of dialed in and you got your operations in order, but I was very hands-on. I didn't do the work, but I had the subs in place to do it. But I was meeting on site, signing new leases, or we were turning over an apartment or something, lining the subs out, to what they were supposed to do to freshen the place up, and it was a grind, even though I wasn't actually doing most of the work there, but just the management aspect of it. I managed it. I was a hands-on manager owner. Yeah.
Yeah, man, you've done a little bit of everything. And want to transition to storage here soon, but what years was this when you were doing the just everything, the flips, the fourplexes, mobile homes? What years are we talking there?
Yeah, so I was flipping in 11, 12, 13. I bought my first fourplex in 14. So it was after the 07, 08 crash, and at least in my area, flipping was hot. I've never wholesaled. I didn't even know what wholesaling was back then. I was buying short sale properties, foreclosures, or just watching the MLS and, making offers on the day that it hit the MLS, that type of thing. I wasn't even in the wholesale realm of things. So I never experienced that. Most of the things that I bought over the years have been either listed or pocket listings or, short sale, stuff like that.
Yeah, for sure. And then you said fourplexes, mobile homes too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So my first deal was I bought a fourplex on about 2 acres of land, probably about 45 minutes away from where I was living. And I wanted to build that fourplex out. And these were like ground level, 2-bedroom, 1-bath, mom and pop apartments. These weren't like, 2-story, condo style. And I went in, I got approved, and I hired a contractor to build more apartments. And I almost did it. I sat down with my banker. I was just crunching numbers. I'm like, man, this is going to be a 20-year buy and hold. And it was going to be a 20-year grind before I ever made money with that. And one of my lenders owned a couple mobile home parks. And he said, man, you ought to really consider mobile homes. And I hated that idea. I hate mobile homes. But I was trying to make this property as affordable, as profitable as I could. So I tried to build a mobile home park there, and they would not allow me to do it. So what I ended up doing is subdividing it and made some high-end apartments and mobile homes. It's like I created like a community there. And I put up some nice fencing, and it was like when you drove in, it was the community. You could rent a mobile home. You can rent an apartment, and I did that for about 8 years, and it cash flowed well. And but it was kind of like it was at its maximum capacity as far as revenue is concerned. I really, the rents were high. I was the highest guy in town. There's no room to expand, and it was just a grind. I'm like, okay, I need to maybe get buy a bigger park or something. I was still on the mobile home kick, and I was listening to mobile home podcasts and thinking, how do I scale? Because I like the revenue and the cash flow that the mobile home was creating, because it was just little to nothing investment. Now I own these mobile homes, and I know that's not really the way that mobile home park investors want to do it. They want to just lease the land and have the tenant on the mobile home. But I was trying to do something pretty quick and get things going. So I just started buying mobile homes and moving them in, brand new ones. But I wanted to scale that, and I was listening to a podcast of a guy that owned a bunch of parks, and he was transitioning from mobile home parks to storage. And I listened to his spiel about why he was transitioning to storage, and a light bulb went off in my brain, and I'm like, I need to look into that, because it's like I was searching for something, and I didn't know exactly what it was. I just know that where I was not taking me where I wanted to go. And I was not excited about it. I hated mobile homes. I hated apartments. But storage, I just love the concept, So I educated myself on that, and that's what led me to Mike Wagner and Storage Rebellion. And so that's how that kind of worked out.
That's cool. What's your take on, it sounds like the fourplexes you had didn't cash flow. What's your take on buying and having cash flow day one versus buying and maybe waiting on appreciation or whatever else you may be waiting on? What's your take there?
No, actually mine cash flowed from day one, but it's kind of like taking over a rundown storage facility, right? I mean, you've got to get rid of the old tenants that aren't paying. They're not taking care of your property. It took me a year at least to make that flip, to make that transition to where when you have to evict somebody or get them out of there, and then you make improvements to that place so that you can get that $1,000 a month. When I bought it, it was, the rents were $500, $550. And, keeping those tenants in place, you're just not going to be able to make improvements on that place. You've got to get them out. You've got to do the upgrade so that you can get that higher rent. And and I had the nicest place in town. It was a small town, not a lot to offer for rental properties. And I had the nicest place in town, whether you wanted to rent a mobile home or an apartment. It was the nicest that area had to offer. And I was able to probably double those rents in just maybe 3 or 4 years. So yeah, it did cash flow. And I think that multifamily is great if that's your passion, if you enjoy that process, but you're dealing with a different expense ratio and a different headache factor. And I did not have the systems in place to deal with those on a large scale. And once I started digging into storage and realizing what it took to own and operate and what the expense ratio was involved in storage, I also decided that I like that model better as well.
Yeah. It sounds like, and I could be wrong, but it sounds like you've used your own money and I'm assuming bank loans for these properties.
Absolutely. I've always used my own money, and it's a limiting factor. But I've never partnered on anything till this day on any kind of real estate, other than my wife, obviously. But so I'm not against partnerships, but I'm definitely, I think that I need to consider partnerships and to actually grow. So I pretty much just self-funded, use bank loans. And another factor here, once I knew that storage was something that I really wanted to do, I put this little community I'm just telling you about, I put it up for sale, put it on the market. Well, about 3 months later, Hurricane Ida hit me and didn't wipe me out, but it just took me out of the game for a year. I had roofs blown off, trees down on mobile homes. I mean, it was a war zone, and my tenants were displaced. And so my dreams of getting into storage, selling this place and rolling into a storage facility just got pushed way back. And I'm like, man, I'm just beat down. It was so bad in the area that we couldn't even get an adjuster to come out and wow. Assess the damage, because everyone was damaged in the whole area. I mean, it was just like the whole South of Louisiana was just overwhelmed with this storm. So my tenants were displaced, and to be honest with you, I was lucky. I had good insurance. Insurance company paid what they needed to pay. I got the place turned around. It took a year to fill the place back up and to get it up and operating. I put it back on the market, and I was able to sell it. And I was in talks with some owners on a storage facility about this time, and I was able to 1031 out of that property. And it was about the time that I'm pretty sure I was going to get this storage facility, and the stars just aligned. But because of the storm and the recovery and just me being done with that property before I was even hit by the hurricane, I was just so emotionally and physically done with that project that it was just like, I'm just ready to get out of it. I don't care what else I do. I just need to get out of this property.
Yeah. And what year was this?
That was, I sold that property in December of 22.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you found your first, how'd you find your first storage deal? And that was in 23?
Yeah. So this is about the time that I had discovered John Farling, and I was, I knew your story. You were one of the earlier successes in Mike Wagner's program, and I knew that you had some really good things going on. And I called you, and you kind of sat me down and said, "Hey, man, you're going to have to, pick up the phone. You're going to have to write some letters. You're going to have to really get out of your comfort zone here." And I took that to heart, and I started writing letters to all the facilities within like an hour drive of me, because I really liked your concept of investing in your backyard, and I felt comfortable with that. So it was pretty quiet. I started writing letters, and I would say like my first 20 letters. About 2 months later, I had an owner text me and asked me if they had received my letter, and am I still interested? So that was November of 22 that I got that letter, and it was somewhere around Thanksgiving, and we started talking about me possibly buying their facility, and I was in that 1031 exchange, so time was ticking. I didn't have any other deals going. I had nobody else responding to my letters. I was still looking at other properties, but none of them that really was meeting my criteria, I guess, at the time. So yeah, I felt like this was my opportunity, and maybe it wasn't the best opportunity, maybe it wasn't perfect, but timing wise and the money that I had to spend, and it was low. It was like 20 minutes down the road from my personal home. It was like all of these factors started adding up. I'm like, man, this might be it. So that's what I pursued pretty much. It took about almost the whole length of my 180-day 1031 time period was spent trying to get this thing to the closing table, and that was negotiating. And then once we went under contract, it was SBA, and the documentation required for SBA. It just took almost 6 months to do that. Yeah.
Did you, in your letter or your conversations with that seller, did you tell them that you were in a 1031?
I did not tell them in the letter. No, that came in later conversations. I did put in the letter that I was local and I'm in basically the next town over. And I think that resonated with them because they had received a couple of letters from other people, probably not in the area. And for me to be able to drive over there and shake their hand, I think is what got me in the door. Yeah.
Yep. No, I agree. Yeah. And that's a huge marketing tactic. And that's what I use too. If I can meet them on site, just amazing how many doors are broken down when you can meet them on site, show them that you're a real person and, you're there and you can take over their property that they've had for decades. I was just wondering if you added the 1031 in there, just because I'm wondering if people would be more open to saying, hey, yeah, you know what? I might be open to selling because you've got a 1031, right? Because you have to buy something. So I'm wondering if more people would reach out if you put that in your letter. Thoughts? What do you think?
It's a possibility, and I guess it depends on the level of sophistication of the seller. Like these sellers didn't. Once we got into talks about the 1031, they had never heard of it. They didn't know anything about a 1031, and so actually, their light bulb went off on in their brains because. So I was dealing with 3 siblings that owned it, and they were thinking about, okay, what are they going to do? How are they going to transition to their other investments? What are they going to do with that money? So they looked into a 1031 once they realized what it was, but and they didn't actually execute a 1031 on that. But I'm just saying that I guess it depends on the level of sophistication, and I don't know if a seller would look at that as maybe this buyer is a little bit more desperate because he's under a time crunch. I don't know if that would be beneficial or not to a buyer for the seller to know that you're in a 1031.
Yep. No, good points. So what's this deal look like?
So way bigger than I was looking for, to be honest with you. So this older couple built this business over the last 20 years, and they handed the business off to their 3 sons, which did not get along, and they all had different visions for the property. Some liked it the way it was, some wanted to improve on it. And they just couldn't get together on, and this was a big chunk of their retirement, I guess you could say. And the ones that were in the deal felt like they didn't want to invest anymore. They wanted to take more control of their money and maybe go invest it the way they would want to invest it, because they had to go to their other brothers and have talks, and they didn't have total control over their equity. So that was a reason for them to sell. Another facility not far away had recently sold for a pretty good chunk, and they thought that, okay, well, we got this letter from this guy, that one down the road sold for a decent price. Maybe we should sell it. And now what I know now, looking back, they were not operators. They grew up around the business. They helped actually build some of these buildings, but they weren't operators. So paper leases, no website. But I have to say that this facility is beautiful and well kept. So it's 2 facilities. about 800 feet apart. So they had about an acre and a half. They built 18,000 square feet of non-climate, and it's got 3 climate control buildings, beautiful iron gates, concrete drives. It's a Class B facility, nice office. Then once they filled up that over the years, they bought the 4 acres, 800 feet down the road, and started building more. And they did a great job in laying out. I've got Class A boat and RV there and standard non-climate, and I've got plenty of room to build more RV and boat. And if the demand is there, which I think that it will be over time, a more modern climate control building that would be more like road frontage there. So total of 45,000 square feet nice. Between the two. Way bigger, way more expensive than I was looking for. But it was the only opportunity I really had in front of me at the time. And I felt really nervous about doing this deal because I know most people look at 10, 15, 20,000 square feet for their first deal. Yep. I was nervous about the size and the amount of money that I had to put into it. And I think that I was overpaying a little bit for it because I was paying for some land that was not generating income, right? So I knew going into it that it was going to be a long-term project. I was going to have to hold it. I was going to have to improve on it. And it wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be this cash flowing monster right off the bat, for its sheer size, for one, and me not being in the business and trying to learn it as I go. So it's been a little over a year that I've owned it. So we closed on it the beginning of April of 23. And so here we are, 14 or 15 months into it. And it's been quite the challenge, but I mean, it was a game changer. The day I closed on it, net worth went up tremendously just by owning this property, so that's kind of my story on how I got into storage.
Yeah. So where's revenue gone in that 14, 15 months, whatever it is?
Yeah. So you would think that a 45,000 square foot facility would be bringing in, $30,000 to $35,000 a month, right? Well, they were bringing in, like I said, these were not operators; these were old tenants. Their rents were way low, and the owners were using a lot. I mean, you got 3 siblings, and they all have extended family. They're all using the boat and the RV, big units, 14 by 45. They got all their junk in there, and nobody's paying. So they were bringing in like $20,000 a month on this property, and so I have hit 28 and 29,000, give or take, in the first 9 or 10 months. So the gross revenue was around probably 260 when I bought it, and that's what they had in the previous 2 years. And I took it to 305 in the first year, and I expect to be hopefully closer to 350 in gross revenue at the end of maybe this 212. So it's still a work in progress. It's not where it needs to be, but I think once it is optimized or stabilized, so to speak, and maybe even the build happens, which I've been getting bids and meeting with contractors to try to do it. But with the current financial environment and interest rates, I'm kind of holding back. My boat and RVs are full. There's a demand for that. I'm the only one in town that has the Class A enclosed units, and I can't keep them. And I've raised rents on them 3 times in a year. So I feel I have a little niche in certain areas, and then there's certain units I'm having trouble renting up. So yeah.
Is this? Oh, sorry, you broke up a little bit. Is this one facility? Will this take you out of your glass job, your glass business?
Man, I've been running those numbers. If I was to get, I'm still low. I'm still struggling with occupancy. I'm still teetering around the 70% occupancy. And I think if I can get to that sweet 85 to 88 with the existing buildings that are in place, possibility, maybe things will be tight, but I don't have the stress of that business, and I can just focus on storage. Yep. And maybe it's not even to expand this one right now. Maybe I should be looking at just buying another facility and come back to this one when the time is right, But to answer your question, my income has been really solid for a lot of years in the glass business. It has provided us for many, many years. It's hard to walk away from that income, and being in business for 25 years. I don't see myself walking into walking out of that business and into being a full-time storage investor in a year. I know you kind of gave me the pep talk, like, man, why can't you do it in 5 months, or why can't you do it in 6 months? And replacing that stream of income that glass business provides for me, I have not figured out how to make that in storage yet. But I can actually see now. I have a vision that storage is my ticket out, and it is my ticket for the rest of my life. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, no, and it's there's a transition period, right? And it sounds like you're well on that way. How big is the town that this facility's in, population?
I'm in a town of about 20,000 people, and I'm competing. Well, there's nobody in my 3 mile, but in that 3 to 5, it's thick, it's heated. I've got 2 Cube Smarts and a couple of mom and pops. But in my 3 mile, I've got no one, but I have less rooftops there. But I am serving like a 10-mile radius north of me. All of those people rent from me, or potentially will rent from me.
Yeah. That's awesome. Yeah. It sounds like you'll get there. And I want to know, just cause I'm curious, and if you don't want to share, that's fine. But you said you want to build, but you're at 70% occupied. Are there certain units that are full that you're like, all right, 5x10s are full. I don't have enough. I need to build all 5x10s, or what's the purpose behind the build?
Yeah. So RV and boat, I found they filled up within the first 5 or 6 months. This family never advertised. As soon as I created the website and started advertising boat and RV, bam, they filled up. And the climate control has always stayed at around 90%. I've always had a couple of sizes on hand. So it took me a few months to realize what the strengths and weaknesses were for this facility. It's the 5x10, 10x10, 10x20, your standard non-climate drive up. Those sizes are struggling, so, I have those sizes really, and renting those sizes, holding me back from an overall, build project, unfortunately.
Do you think that's because your competitors that are more than 3 miles away are lower, or they have better specials, or why the market just doesn't need those sizes, or what's the?
I'm kind of questioning that, and I'm somewhat in a rural area. I am I'm in the city limits, but I am an outlier compared to the other facilities that I'm competing against. So I'm wondering myself, have I hit the market maximum for these non-climate drive-up, units, or is the market there? Just because this family built it doesn't mean that it should have been built. I am now questioning their expansion on certain sizes when they started building some of these other units. I'm questioning why maybe they shouldn't have done that. And then the other side of me is saying that, this place was, legitimately 85% occupied when I bought it, even though they weren't paying what they should have been paying, and some of them were not paying at all, but it was 85% occupied. So that tells me that is achievable. But it took them 20 years to do that. I can't come in and turn this place around and start, ripping the Band-Aid off with my rates, which we did. And we had probably 10 to 15% of those tenants move out. But like I say, lower occupancy, but higher revenue. I think that it's just going to happen over time. And I've learned that in the environment that we're in, the money that I need to spend is on marketing and advertising. The facility is beautiful. The curb appeal is beautiful. The website's there. Your ability to rent online 24 hours a day. Everything is there. Management's there. Call center's there. Everything is there other than getting people in the door. So my focus has just been pay-per-click, SEO improvements, and I'm starting to see that trend now. And not to mention, I think that we've been in an economic lull across. Everybody I talk to in storage is just struggling with occupancy. You've got a lot of facilities. I'm sure that some of yours are probably, dipping down a little bit. I'm in one market, so I don't really have anything to compare to. What do you see, because you're in different markets, what have you seen as far as occupancy in the last year, say 2023?
Yeah, what was it? November of 22, I believe. Yeah, 22. It like Thanksgiving hit, and it seemed like everybody moved out. Since then, it kind of held steady for probably 12-ish months, and then this year, really at the beginning of the year too. I was looking at my net rentals and my revenue last night, and it just keeps going up. So I don't know if seasonality's there, but I don't know if it's, I don't know, because I've heard occupancy's down across the board everywhere, but I've been up and keep going up, knock on wood, all year this year. So this year's been strong for me. Who knows? There's so many different factors, people moving. There's just so many different factors, and every market's different too. But for the most part, all my markets have been pretty strong this year. So
yeah, good to hear. I mean, I think it's going to be a waiting game. What's happening in the political environment right now, and hopefully the Fed's going to start lowering rates, and people are going to start building houses and buying houses and selling houses. And I'm really hoping, I'm optimistic that in the next 6 to 10 months, we're going to start to see some things break free, and people are going to start deploying some capital, and people are going to move around, and that's what we need, right? So I feel a little bit, I know a lot of people that get into storage, and they're, yourself being one, they buy a couple facilities their first year, and then their second year they pick up a couple more, and I kind of feel like I'm just a little over a year in ownership, and I feel that I should be looking to buy more, or I should, and I am looking to expand. I mean, that's my first play would be to expand. I own the land already, right? I feel like I'm a little stagnant right now because I'm trying to just deal with what I have on my plate. Why go buy another business when the business that you have is not where it needs to be? I mean, that's just my logical thinking. But at the same time, I'm like, man, I need to grow. How can I grow? I'm just kind of stuck in that mindset right now where, is it best to stay put, or should I really push the envelope and look somewhere else and maybe try to buy another facility somewhere else?
Yeah, no, you bring up a good point. I did a show, I don't remember, a few shows before this one, about how important operations is. And that's what you're working on right now. There's no right answer, right? You got to go with the speed at what you're comfortable with and what you're good at. But right now you're focused on operations, which is great, because most people do not. Most people, and you think about it, I don't want to call them gurus, but gurus, people that you see teaching any type of real estate, all they talk about is finding deals. They don't talk about the operations. And operations is what carries that deal forward and makes it a real deal, right? You could have bought that facility right there, and you could have ran it into the ground. Even though you said it wasn't a great deal, but it sounds like it was a really good deal. You could have ran the operations in the ground, and now it's worth less than what you paid. So it's all about operations. After you could buy a crappy deal and turn it around, and now it's a great deal 3 years later. So yeah, it's, you got to pick what way you want to go. You want to keep acquiring, focus on operations, do both at the same time. It's, my guess is stopping your glass business would probably help a little bit in that area, but you'll figure it out.
Yeah, I think over time, I think that, the size of the facility for one, some people would maybe pick up 10,000 square foot one here and maybe another 15 there. I kind of feel like I bought 2 or 3 in one clean sweep. I don't really necessarily need to go buy another one next year. If we're talking about number of doors or square footage, I think I'm in a good place as a newbie, as a new owner operator. I'm not in a bad place as far as that's concerned. So that's kind of something I keep telling myself.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, this has been good. This has been very interesting and fun to listen to. Let's get in the last kind of 3 questions here. What's the one thing that you're better at than everybody else?
I've heard you ask this question before. I am not better at anything than anybody, but I tell you, I'm pretty good with, I'm hands-on kind of guy. I can fix most things. And that's been really great so far for me, but I need to learn how to delegate a little bit better and not put my hands on every single thing. But between, having a little bit of general knowledge of everything, whether it be construction or whatever, just hands-on type of stuff, and being just laser focused, persistent. Like, I'm not going to give up until I reach the goal. And that goes back to my racing days and, all the other things I've done in my life. It taken me many years to achieve what I wanted to achieve. It never happened overnight for me. It's always taken 5-10 years. And so I would say if you're waiting on me to quit, you're going to be waiting a long time, because I'm not quitting. So I'd have to say that's what I'm better at than most people. I will outwork you, and I will stick it out longer than most people will.
Yep. That's awesome. Well, and I think most successful, well, definitely successful entrepreneurs have that trait, right? Just not, some of us are just too dumb to give up, right? We don't know any better. But yeah, that's definitely a strength. That's awesome. So I'm going to make this question a little bit harder. You can't answer leaving your glass business, or find another facility. So what's next for you? And you can't use either one of those.
So I can't, it's not leaving and it's not buying another facility. What's my goal?
Yep. Yeah. You got to give me something else. What's next?
Okay. So if I'm not buying a facility, it's taking what I have and just throwing the kitchen sink at it to make it successful. Which I feel like I'm already doing. I've got my pulse on the market, on the business, on the industry. I jump on every Zoom that I can. I try to keep educating myself on how do I make my business better. I don't feel like I've left any stone unturned on making what I have on my plate successful. So really, the next thing is, like you said, I've got units to fill, and the way I look at it, man, these empty units are my ticket out of the glass business. If I can put forth 100% of my efforts into marketing and get people in the door to make this storage business better, the glass business is just going to go away on its own. So that's my laser focus. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's absolutely awesome. And I have a feeling you'll get there. So anyone wants to reach out, have questions, want to connect, want to learn how to be a professional boat racer, where can they find you?
I would love to connect with anybody, talk about storage or boat racing or anything. You could always find me on Facebook, Max Toler. Instagram, I'm there, but I'm not on very often. LinkedIn, or you can always email me, gracepropertiesofla@gmail. But probably the easiest, just jump on Facebook and message me. I'm always on.
Cool. Awesome, man. Well, this show's been awesome. Very interesting, fun to learn more about you. Excited to see where you're going too. Appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you having me. It's been awesome.
Awesome. We'll see you guys later.
Thanks for following, subscribing, and listening to this episode of the Do More podcast hosted by John Farling. To learn more or ask questions, go to l4investing.com.